And that music means it's time for Talk of the Bay, right here on listener-supported community radio K-Squid. I'm Rachel Ann Goodman, your Thursday evening host, and it's my pleasure to be joined today by two guests who are going to talk about an important event coming up Saturday in Aptos, California, right here in our listening area. But it's really bigger ripples that will ripple out to the rest of the world because it's about the ever-present issue of climate change and what we can do about it. Here to talk about that are Rabbi Shifra Weiss Penzias from Temple Beth El in Aptos and Deacon Patrick Conway from Resurrection Church, also in Aptos. Welcome to the both of you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel. Rachel, I know you could hardly wait, but it's actually Sunday.
Okay, I misdated it, if that's a word. Sunday. Okay, that gives us even more time to put it on the calendar. Let's talk about the event first, and then we're going to talk about what religious groups have to say about the topic of climate change and why it is a spiritual issue as well as an environmental and existential issue for all of us. Patrick?
Hey. Yeah, our Climate Fest is a result of our coalition of various faith communities in Santa Cruz County. And a few months ago, we had the idea of having an event like this. So it's going to kick off on Sunday at 11:30. We'll have 3 food trucks in our courtyard area promoting kind of sustainable food and sustainable eating. There's going to be an opening ceremony. And then Rabbi Shifra and others are going to talk about engaging in climate advocacy, Why Your Voice Matters, featuring Senator John Laird. We'll have, some spiritual insight activities about what's going on inside of ourselves as we face denial, fears about the future, and as well as some helpful presentations on how to talk about climate change and other difficult issues. There'll be a panel discussion on making a difference by eating well, and then it'll end up with the interfaith ceremony for honoring the earth. Throughout the day, there's going to be different stations that people can go to, ways that you can get involved. There will be community groups on our Labyrinth patio between the 2 buildings, and we'll have children's activities, eco-fashion, fashion with fashion shows, listening stations where people can come and talk about their ideas and feelings about it, an activity on planting for the earth, getting your hands in the dirt, display of electric vehicles, as well as some home electrification in display. So it's going to be quite a full day.
It sounds almost like a mini Earth Day, which we miss having.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's going to be really fun, like Earth Day was too. And people of all ages. There's engaging things for people of all ages.
So, Rabbi, tell me a little bit about why you think spiritual communities like yours, like Temple Beth El and Resurrection Church, are involved with talking about and helping people do actions toward making climate change less of a threat.
Well, I think the climate, for me, is a religious issue for 3 reasons. First of all, because I think we are called to protect the planet. We weren't given the planet to just run all over and destroy. And it's not our planet, actually. I believe it's God's planet and that we're here to take care of it. It's sacred everywhere you turn, everything you look at, and every generation to come. And it's up to us. I believe deeply, and for me, this is a spiritual conviction, that it is our responsibility to take care of it. And we have a very, very dire situation here that we must respond to. So that's the first reason. And then also on another level, I think coming together to do it as a group is much more uplifting and effective. It's very overwhelming to think, okay, I personally am going to solve the climate crisis.
It's a big planet, I'm a small person kind of feeling that you get when you read the headlines.
Exactly. Yeah. And the whole way our whole society is set up, let's face it, is to just consume. And so to turn around our habits, to really to say, hey, this is crazy. The way we're on this, train straight for doomsday, this doesn't make any sense. caring about future generations is a spiritual practice, and also working together is a spiritual practice. So I'm really excited that we're working together with many faiths. I'm excited that, for example, I'm facilitating the talk by Senator John Laird with Aisha from the Muslim community. And I think it's super cool that a Jewish person and a Muslim person who both care deeply about the climate are getting together to really share why this is so important to us and to work together.
It can feel so overwhelming with all the world's events swirling around us, wars and that are ripping communities apart. And also just watching the headlines from Europe and these big floods happening in Italy today. It's hard to find solid ground amidst all of the headlines. And so tell me about how localizing something like this, where people are doing something, can help people's mental state. Because if you look at the headlines, you can feel very powerless, like these things are bigger than me. It is a big globe, and also we've been trying to get the attention of leaders of the world for quite some time, and the scientists are getting more and more loud, and they're not usually used to doing that. So we have this kind of pressure building from people, but ignoring happening on the leading edge of this. So how does something like this, just getting together with neighbors in a spiritual group to talk about these things and do something, how does that help?
Well, there is a lot we can do. There's legislation, first of all. We can advocate for legislation. And more than that, I think there is a cultural tipping point where a group can become an influence and change a culture. And we saw this, for example, with the GLBTQ community, that from when I was a child, people were absolutely in danger if they came out and said they were gay. They were completely closeted. And over time, people really changed the culture, at least here in the United States. Cultures can be changed, and that's what we need to do. And in order to do that, we need to talk about it. We need to be out with it. We need to be open about it. And we need to come together and raise our voice and even celebrate that here we are working together, really caring about this issue. I think the more people that hear about the climate, the more they themselves will feel empowered to join and do something about it. And that's really what this is about. But there is so much we can do. And we have to do it. We really have no choice.
Patrick, I want to turn to you. Some people in the Christian faith are saying that, life is going to be good after you go to heaven. And right now is not so important, where we are, because we're getting rewarded and there'll be paradise elsewhere. I always found that to be disconcerting, because there's other traditions that say that this is the only paradise we're going to be given, and it's not really ours, as we just heard Rabbi Shifra say. How do you respond to some groups that are religious-based saying that what we do here is kind of a temporary thing?
Well, I would say, I would invite them to look again at what our founder, Jesus, did. He just didn't talk about the afterlife and about how good it was going to be. He didn't do much of that at all. In fact, he went around helping people. He spent hours and hours ministering to people, healing them, feeding them. And so he was very much about relieving human suffering right now. And the stories that are in our scriptures about him, it never did he fail to turn to help somebody who came to him. He didn't care who they were or what their religion was or wasn't, or what gender they were or nationality. He was drawn by their need. And I think that's the true spirit of Christianity, or of any religion, that we are drawn by human need, we're drawn by suffering. And it's really our love that leads us to act here, because there's suffering happening right now from climate change, and all the indications are that it will get worse. And we can make it less worse. I guess that's the most optimistic thing we can say. But if it reduces suffering in the future and in the present, then that's what we're drawn and called to do.
What do you make of so many Christians wanting to vote for Donald Trump, who wants to say drill, baby, drill, and pretty much denies that climate change is a threat, never mentions it except to say, I'm for oil, and he has some bizarre asides about windmills, and sharks. I don't know. Can't make sense of it. But so many people who identify as Christians, like you just said, a different perspective on that. What do you make of that? What is it about this large group of evangelicals in particular who are willing to overlook personal and political lines of statement in order to vote for this person who clearly is not going to make climate change any better?
Right, amongst other things.
I
would say it's a matter
bashing.
of looking at the truth, looking at the facts about his record, about what he says, about his relationship to truth in general, his relationship to compassion and helping people. I mean, it's there for everyone to see. So, electing him again is not going to be good for any of us in truth. And so it would be, really a matter of saying, am I going to, as a Christian, am I going to follow Jesus, follow his spirit, follow his teachings, or am I going to follow somebody else?
We're really at a crux moment here where, people's will, if you really want to change legislation, for example, on climate change, you have a pretty stark choice about who's going to do that. And if that's your one issue, sometimes people have multiple issues that they care about. But this one overrides all of them and could either make things direly worse or cause us to turn a corner at some point toward ameliorating some of the worst impacts that are coming our way and hopefully averting them, as you said, for next generation. So,
and I want to speak to the question that you asked, Deacon Patrick, because I think it's a great contradiction that we of the religious community in Santa Cruz are getting together and saying, hey, this is a religious issue. And the evangelicals who are voting for Donald Trump, God bless them. They have the best of intentions. They care about abortion because they care about the least of these. They really are going from their heart. They care. They're just getting different information. And that's why K-Squid is so important, honestly. And it's important for us to speak a different perspective and to give, they're getting, I'm going to say, a particular set of information from people with a particular agenda. And based on the information they have, many of them, with the best of intentions, are voting their conscience. And I think that the best thing we can do is love them and talk to them and meet them and share another perspective.
a lot of people just don't want to talk about this climate change thing because it brings up so many feelings of powerlessness. How do you defang it to a point where it doesn't end up in a cesspool of self-pity and just, powerlessness? How there is a space in this event you're putting on where people can share some of those feelings and maybe get them out of the way so they can be more active instead of just go drink another pint. How do you facilitate that kind of space where people could allow themselves to feel some of the despair and maybe get past it to some collective action?
Yeah, I mean, climate grief is real. It's very, very present and real. It makes total sense to be scared. It makes total sense to be confused about what we can actually do. There is no roadmap for correcting this problem. It's not like, well, just do this, and this is an unprecedented problem.
But we do have some tools, and there are
Exactly.
ways. We actually have everything we need to make it happen, except for the political leadership needed. Because people like you and I can't create a giant solar plant on our own. The individual action is wonderful, but we can't do those big things that are needed. So, there's the climate plan that has billions of dollars in investment in solar and wind. And I heard a statement that 30% of our power now in the world is coming from renewables, which is amazing.
Yeah.
if that's actually correct. I heard it on NPR, so it was Climate One, I believe. So I was really shocked to hear that we are making progress. Maybe not fast enough, but we are. And yet there's often a feeling that we can't do it fast enough when you see headlines like the floods in Europe.
Right. But I think we do know also how to change minds and how to change hearts. And it is by speaking up, and by coming together. And that's what this is about.
I get very inspired when I see groups of people, standing up for what's right. There's something very heartening about that, but it seems like we aren't taught in our culture to act collectively. Like maybe the churches and synagogues are one place where people can come together as a one mind in some respect. Talk about that, Patrick, from your perspective as a leader in your church, in Resurrection Church, how you facilitate feelings of collective empowerment, which can be elusive.
Right. Well, the problems that we face that we share in common with all other human beings, that's where we, as members of different religious communities, can come together, because they're not one religion specific. This is science. This is scientific fact. It's an existential threat. So it's very easy for us to come together with other people of we call goodwill, who want to address these together. It's very powerful. It's one of my favorite things to do is to do interfaith work like this, because it breaks down a lot of barriers. And some people within our own traditions, what are you doing with those people? They don't believe what we believe. I said, oh yeah, they do. They don't believe everything we believe, but we believe in these great things in common, like love and compassion and doing something to alleviate human suffering and to make the world as good as it can be. And there's a powerful energy unleashed with that. And I think as we leaders practice that, we give our members permission to say, oh yeah, this is good, we can do this. I think people can get swayed either way. They can get pulled into polarization and feeling separated, or they can get pulled into unity. And what I see is a great relief when we give people opportunities and permission to say, yes, we can work together with these people of other faiths or of no particular faith at all who share our values in these things. The thing that also comes up is, it's been over 20 years since Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth movie, right? So it's been out there. Not that was the first revelation of it. But I find that a lot of people are like, yeah, okay, that's real. I'm not a denier. They're not a denier intellectually, but in the choices they make, they haven't yet bought into it. And so that's something that we need to continue to challenge people to do. I know for me it can be challenging when I talk about Climate Fest and these things, or Pope Francis came out with Laudate Si 8 years ago. So we had a big festival around that as well. But people still get uncomfortable. Somebody said, oh, that's like a left-wing issue. I said, well, it's a shame if it is. It should be everybody's issue because it's fact, it's science. So we have to navigate that and be courageous and be willing to take criticism when people say, oh, you're being political. They don't want us to be political in church, There's a good way to be political and a bad way to be political. So to break that ground in people and encourage them, give them positive things that they can do, which is exactly what the Climate Fest is about, that you can make small changes. You can get a hybrid. If you're afraid of an electric vehicle, which you shouldn't be, you can get a hybrid. And that'll cut your carbon footprint in half, maybe. And if a billion people do that, well, that's big.
Right. It's these do add up. And so there's often this either or discussion where someone says, well, it's not on the individual, it's on these systems, these huge systems that are eating the planet and resisting, phasing out fossil fuels, which is what needs to happen. On the other hand, it doesn't have to be either or. If it's and both, we have to advocate, we have to elect people who will do these hard decisions. And that's difficult in a situation where money talks and these corporations can hand out big checks for you to change your position on whatever, drilling in the Arctic. So it's not one or the other. We really have to do both. And these choices, like, should I fly to Europe this year? That's a personal choice. I could say I can't go because I just don't want to do that to the planet. Or I could say I'm going because I'm teaching about climate change and I want to spread it further. Those decisions can be hard because alone you feel like, well, what's one plane flight? So those are those decisions we make every day, some of which are really hard, and we deceive ourselves that we're just doing a little harm, right? That adds up too, but the good adds up. So if you just joined me, I'm here on Talk of the Bay. I'm Rachel Ann Goodman. We're here at K-Squid Radio, and I'm talking with Patrick Conway, deacon at the Resurrection Church in Aptos, and Rabbi Shifra Weiss-Penzias, who is here from Temple Bethel, also in Aptos. And this event is Sunday. What's the time?
It starts at 11:30 and it goes till 4:30. And, there's lots of things going on throughout the day. You can come and go as you please. So, if you want to come at 3 o'clock, that's fine too. 4 o'clock, if you want to come at 11:30, leave it too. So it's very flexible.
What about, you said there were kids' activities. How do you talk to children in your various organizations, the children amongst you, about this topic? We don't want to scare them. At the same time, we want them to know what's really happening because they do pick up on these things. Rabbi, what's your response to that question?
And my first response is to listen to the children because they're very concerned about the climate. Most children that I talk to know about it. They're already learning about it. They're already worried about it. And in our community, children know that there were fires. They know that there were floods. They're experiencing it. They're living it. So to give them a sense of they can do something about it, we're going to let kids draw pictures about it. We're going to encourage them to write letters about it. We're going to also kind of model for them some more sustainability practices and just kind of get them used to the idea that we can change our culture. And it starts with the kids in a lot of ways. They're the generation that are going to be feeling this more than we are.
I hope they don't get angry we didn't do enough. That's always the fear, isn't it? That they'll curse our generation for not fixing it in time. Patrick, what is your thought about the kids and how to incorporate them? I would love for you to record some things that we can run on the radio from kids. That would be interesting. Like, what's your vision for the future of a healthy planet? Just ask them that.
Yeah, that's
see
great.
what they say.
I think children can be leaders for us because they see the simple truth about things that we teach them, and they say, well, why are we doing this? Why aren't we doing the right thing? They can be very pure-hearted, and sometimes that can really get to us adults. So I think we'll teach our children about the right choices to make and the right ways to behave, and they will in turn lead us in the right direction as well. Because their simple truth can cut through to our hearts, and we also care about them in the future that we're leading them. You think, well, if it's just me, but this child, my grandchild, what world am I leaving them? That's powerful motivation.
And it can be heartbreaking listening to the children. I can't tell you how many children I've heard say, well, I won't be having children because I don't know what the world would be like for them by the time they're growing up. It's heartbreaking.
It was heartbreaking for me when my daughter told me that.
Mm-hmm.
No grandkids for me because, why would I want to bring someone into this world, which is like, it cuts right very personally, right? When you hear your own family member tell you that.
Yeah, and it's on us to make the difference. It's the when I was growing up, the adults all were saying, I was growing up in the 60s and the 70s, the adults were all saying, oh, well, you're the kids that are going to change the world. And I just think, hey, we're not going to put this on these kids. It's on us.
Yeah. It's on the owners of Exxon and other places that are lobbying so hard to keep just doing drill, baby, drill instead of making a really quick turn that we need. I don't know how quick we need it, but as fast as possible. And it is possible. We have the technology. Again, we need the political will, and they need to feel it. I was disappointed personally that in the presidential debate, it did not come up at all. And in the Democratic National, convention, it came up once. It got mentioned briefly, at least the time I was watching. And I think, homelessness also got one little teeny mention. It was very strange to not have acknowledged that this
I
is
think
happening.
it was mentioned in the presidential debates because I remember Kamala Harris saying that he said that climate change was a hoax. I remember her saying that in the debate, which I was glad. But you're right that it didn't. I mean, this should be the biggest issue.
It should, because it's going to permeate all other decisions, right, and all our reactions. And we don't want to just be reacting to the next big disaster. We want to be making ourselves more resilient and preventing the worst of it from happening, because as I understand it, these tipping points, they will negate everything we do if they happen, if they begin. They're kind of a snowball effect, and we need to step away from them happening, because then we really will be just reacting, and that would be not a good place to be. So I commend you for carving out a whole morning and afternoon for people to focus on this. Why don't you give out the information one more time before we have to say goodbye? And I really appreciate your energy and your time and your heart in tackling such a difficult topic in a light way.
And you too, Rachel. Thank you. And thanks to K-Squid for all the good things that are going on over here.
We're
Yes.
so happy to provide this amplification to communities. It's really what we're here for.
Well, thank you. So you're all invited to Climate Fest 2024. It's this Sunday, September 22nd from 11:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at Resurrection Church, which is at the corner of State Park and SoCal Drive in Aptos.
And it's going to be fun and really stimulating.
Well, I certainly appreciate you telling us about it, and I wish you all the best for your event. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
coming.
Rachel.
Thank you.
That was Rabbi Shifra Weiss Penzias and Patrick Conway from Resurrection Church and the rabbi from Temple Beth El sharing with us about a really exciting event on Sunday. Saturday, you have an opportunity for another exciting event, and in just a moment, we'll be visiting with organizers of the musical Soulmates, Let the Caged Bird Sing, musical celebration and expression of survivorship from the Walnut Avenue Women's Shelter. And Gina Renee will be one of our guests in just a moment. So we're excited to have that happen. There'll be some music, some talk, and some uplifting discussion about how to be strong in these times. I'm Rachel Ann Goodman. Stay tuned for all that coming up here on K-Squid.